Good afternoon, guests and listeners, and a warm welcome to all of you. My name is Katerina, and I have the honor of moderating today's lecture. It is a true privilege to see so many engaged and curious minds gathered here, ready to explore and understand the complexities of Colombia's political landscape. So, today's lecture, Understanding Colombia, Political Challenges, Civil Society, and Global Alignments, examines Colombia's political context and the key challenges facing its democracy, including institutional tensions, shifting power dynamics, and the social demands that continue to shape the national agenda. In addition, today's lecture explores Colombia's international relationships, particularly with Ukraine and Russia, analyzing both the political and ethical considerations behind these alignments. Your presence here reflects the importance of this conversation. So it's my great honor to introduce our distinguished speaker, Mr. Juan Carlos Rincón Escalante. Mr. Rincón Escalante is one of Colombia's most respected voices in journalism and public discourse. He is a journalist, lawyer, university professor, public speaker, and a three-time winner of the Simón Bolívar National Journalism Award. He currently serves as the opinion editor at El Espectador, one of Colombia's leading newspapers, where he co-created several influential digital projects, including Pulla y La Puesverdad. Together, these platforms have garnered more than 1 million followers and hundreds of millions of viewers, transforming public debate in Colombia. He is also a best-selling author in 2020. Together with Cecilia Ramos, he published the illustrated book, Depression Does Not Exist, which sold more than 2,000 copies, reached its 16th edition in Colombia, and was later published in Spain and Mexico. Mr. Rincón Escalante holds a master's degree in law from the University of the Andes in Bogota. He taught opinion journalism at Javeriana University for 5 years and has lectured at the University of the Andes. His deep understanding of political dynamics, civil society, and international relations makes him uniquely qualified to guide us through today's discussion. So we are truly excited to be here and have been looking forward to this moment. It's my great honor to welcome our distinguished speaker, Mr. Juan Carlos Rincón Escalante, and to invite him to share his insights directly with us. Juan Carlos, the floor is yours.
Hello, thank you very much for that warm welcome. I was complaining about the cold weather here in Bogota, and then my friends told me that you guys are basically freezing. So I guess please receive my hellos from the tropic. I'm very happy to be here. I had the opportunity to be in Kyiv and in Kharkiv a few months ago, and since then I've been following closely what's been happening in your country, and to me it's very satisfactory that you guys want to know more about Colombia, because one of the things I felt while visiting your country is that we have so many things in common, and we should create networks of communication between our countries, because usually all the attention goes to the European Union and to the United States. But I do think that cooperation between countries like ours can be extremely useful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a crash course in Colombian politics, in Colombian diplomacy, and especially what my reading is about how we are thinking about Ukraine here and how we are thinking about Russia here. That's going to take about 45 minutes, and then we're going to have a space for questions. But please, if during my exposition something isn't clear, maybe my English is not that good or you don't understand anything, please do not hesitate to interrupt so I can make it clearer. So you guys are probably seeing my presentation. This is Colombia's map. The idea behind what I want to tell you guys today is basically this. If I had to summarize Colombia's history in a tweet, it will be this: from failed state to small player with big dreams and bigger problems. And I'm going to elaborate on all of those aspects for you guys. And I think this is going to give you a brief but comprehensive overview of Colombia. So first, let me give you guys some data because I don't know how much you know about Colombia. So we have about 53 million people living here. We are classified by different measures to be an upper middle income country. This is new. I mean, Colombia has been developing rapidly in the past 50 years. We used to be a poor country. We are still far from being what's considered a rich country, and especially by European standards, we are far behind. But for Latin American standards, we are up there. If you see the table I have down here, we are the fourth largest economy in Latin American region. And if you take into account that both Brazil and Mexico are huge countries, um, sorry, are huge countries, so you can understand that. I mean, we are an important country economy-wise. Um, we have a Gini coefficient of 0.56. I don't know if you guys use that in Ukraine, but that's a measure that tells you how unequal a country is. And in terms of resources, how they're distributed. And so we are right there kind of in the middle. So we're extremely unequal country, but we're getting better. Nonetheless, there are some not so good data. So monetary poverty is 31%. So 31% of people in Colombia live in monetary poverty. The definition of monetary poverty, according to Colombia's data center, is when you don't have enough money to have a comfortable day-to-day life, like the minimum, right? So probably this is people that only eat 2 times a day, or this is people that maybe they can eat 3 times a day, but they cannot afford education or different types of services that are deemed essential. So 31% is really high, but nonetheless, the good news is that's been coming down considerably in the last 20 years. The COVID pandemic was awful, and poverty skyrocketed. So we are still um, trying to improve that situation. Extreme poverty is at 11.7%. That's people that cannot eat more than 1 time a day. So that's still a lot. Um, Unemployment is 8%. So this is something interesting. I don't know what Ukraine's unemployment is, but I know that 8% sounds high, especially, I don't know, compared to the United States. But 8% is the best unemployment rate we have had in the past 25 years. And for Latin American standards, this is a good unemployment rate. Still work to do, but I do want you to, what I want you to get from this lecture is that numbers tell a story, but if you want to understand a country like Colombia, you have to think uh, what they are not telling you, and what you have to think about how to make it, how to get a more complex understanding of it. So as I was saying, unemployment is 8.2%. It's worse for women. So women's unemployment is around 12%. The gap has that the gap between women and men has also been going down, but it's still really high. And for young people's unemployment is like 13%, and that's getting worse. And that's a problem that I think a lot of countries have. Now, even though unemployment is low for our standards, what you have to understand, and this is something that whenever I talk to European countries or to the United States, it's hard to grasp, is that our economy, our informal economy is around 55% of those people that are employed. So what I mean by informal economy is people who do not get social benefits, people who's probably are not paying taxes, people who are earning less than minimum wage. So this is people that are outside the system, and you can see it's more than half the country. So compared to economies like European economies or the United States, our economy is still a very informal economy, and that's a problem because if you want to have taxes to build the state, you need to know how much people are earning and how they're earning it. But also, if you want to protect people from abuses, if you want to enforce the minimum wage, you need to have a formal economy, and we don't have that. That being said, and you're going to see that this is probably going to be a pattern in my exposition, this number has been going down. It's been as high as 70%. So we are getting better. But one of the main discussions right now in Colombia is what can we do to make the formal economy more appealing to the great majority of Colombians? And that's a very difficult conversation to have because if you think about people in the informal economy, they're not paying as much taxes. They don't have to pay 30% for health and pension. And since Colombia is a country where some incomes are really low, I mean, you can understand, right? Like you can understand why you wouldn't want to be counted in the formal economy, but that's one thing we have an issue with. We have a constitutional democracy. Actually, we are the only country in Latin America that never had a dictatorship. Uh, and we are very proud of our democracy and our democratic history. Our latest constitution is from 1991, and it's well regarded in the region and in the world as one of the more progressive constitution bases that the region has. We have a Congress, so we have three branches of power. So we have a Congress with 108 senators. Senators are elected nationally, so anybody in any part of Colombia can vote for them. And then we have 188 representatives. So representatives are for each of the 32 departments we have. The country is divided into 32 departments. Our current presidents are the persons in this picture. So you can see Gustavo Petro is the president and Francia Marquez is the vice president. They were elected with 11 million votes. That's more than half of the vote in a runoff election. They're both historical figures because it's the first time that Colombia elects a left-leaning government. We've always been a right-leaning country politically and very conservative. Also, I mean, Marquez is the first African American woman to be vice president, and I might say is the first African American to have that level of power in Colombia. And Petro is an interesting figure, and I'm gonna talk more about him later. But he's interesting because he was part of one of our guerrillas, and he signed a peace treaty at the end of the 80s. And then he became a politician, and he's been a politician for over 30 years. And now he became a president. But for a country with many conflicts, you can understand why some people distrust somebody that used to be a part of guerrillas. And finally, the judicial branch, we have three main courts. So we have the Supreme Court, we have the Constitutional Court, which is the most important one. Because basically they can evaluate what the Supreme Court and the State Council does, and we have the State Council. So each one has their own competency. I'm not gonna like go more in depth in that. If you're interested, you can ask me, but I mean I don't want to give you too many data that you don't think it's important. So this is Colombia at a glance, and according to the data that's available. This tells a story, but this doesn't tell the story. I don't know what you guys have heard of Colombia, but it is quite probable. I mean, you guys study international relationships, so you are not like the average European or Ukrainian, but most people have not heard of Colombia, or if they have heard of Colombia, they have heard of Pablo Escobar and of violence, and we don't have the best marketing team. But I mean, we do have to understand why, and this is why I mean failed state, why we were considered for many years a failed state. And I'm going to give you some numbers, and I think it's going to be interesting for you to see. This is where I think Ukraine's and Colombia's history can start to interact, because I do think that the pain you guys are feeling right now with the war is something that we have felt for so many years. So why are we considered a failed state? I'm going to explain this picture when I give you all these numbers. So most of these numbers come from Colombia's Truth and Reconciliation Commission, that we had a peace deal in 2016. I'm going to tell you more about that in a second. And because of that peace deal, a Truth and Reconciliation Commission was created, and they work over 4 years understanding what happened during our armed conflict. And they published this a couple of years ago. So this data is from them. This is like one of the biggest efforts in the region, and I would say the world, to understand what happened during the conflict. And for example, that is one of the many ways I think Colombia can help Ukraine in all that's coming. So anyway, between 1985 and 2018, 450,000 people were killed, but the estimates go up to 800,000 people were killed. I'm gonna give you something to consider. This is people killed during the conflict, by the conflict, but you have to understand that around these deaths, there are more deaths, and there is more violence that's not directly related to the conflict, but that it's difficult to understand any part of Colombian life without understanding the role the violence has in it, right? So we are talking about 800,000 people killed, but the number is probably much, much higher, because a lot of victims were not included in this count because of the circumstances of their death. But if you want to see why we are a recent failed state, almost half of all those killed are from 1995 to 2004. That's like yesterday. No? I know you guys are probably young and were born after 2000, but I mean, to me, I'm from 1991. Like one of the first memories I have is from a bomb exploding next to my house. So this is one generation ago, not even, right? And if you see who did the killing, this is very interesting, because Colombia is different to many conflicts in the world where, I mean, for example, I'm going to draw some parallels with Ukraine, and please do correct me if I say something wrong. But right now, you know who's attacking you, right? We know the Russians are the problem. We know they're the invaders. We know they're the enemy, and we know that casualties are caused by them. In Colombia, since it was a civil war and actors were not clearly delimited, we have a lot of different people doing a lot of killings for a lot of different reasons. So again, I don't know how much you know about Colombia, but if you know about Colombia and you hear conflict, armed conflict, you think, oh, the guerrillas are the worst. But if you see this data I have here, 45% of people killed, so over 200,000 people, were paramilitary groups. And paramilitary groups were associations of Colombians who were tired of the guerrillas, and they armed themselves, sometimes with the help of the army, and they committed worst crimes than the guerrillas. There are awful stories I could tell you. For example, one of the biggest stories we tell about Colombian conflict is that paramilitaries used to take the head of their victims and play soccer with them. That's the kind of cruelty we're talking. So when I say that we are a traumatized country, this is what I mean. And these are groups, paramilitary groups, that were supposedly defending Colombian people. And they turn out to be the biggest killers. That is not to say that guerrilla groups didn't do it also. If you see the next group with 27% are guerrilla groups, and then you see that most of the killings were made by FARC. FARC are the ones that signed the peace treaty in 2016, and then ELN, which is National Liberation Army in English. They're still killing people today, and they've killed almost 20,000 people, and then others, because that's the other thing. We have so many guerrilla groups. If you ask me which one was Petros, Petros is not here because it's M19, and they almost didn't kill that many people because they were more political and they wanted to do was a show of force and stuff, but they're different than these groups. And then, and this is when it gets extremely painful, if you see the last actor here are state forces. And state forces account for 12% of all killings, 56,000 people. So if you see these pictures I'm showing you here, this is from Jesus Abad, Colorado. This is one of Colombia's most respected photographers, journalist photographers. This is from Medellin. The person with his face covered is a paramilitary, and the others are from the official military, and they were taking one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in Medellin. But the way they did it was they didn't. They basically entered and shot everybody, and they killed a lot of people that were not related to the guerrillas, and those were extrajudicial killings. And this happened in 2002. So I'm telling you about open wounds that my country have. And again, you cannot understand our position in the global order and our diplomatic strategies if you don't understand this. I'm gonna keep giving you data. I'm sorry to be so depressive, but that's why I was invited. So forced disappearance, we have between 121,000 to 210,000 people who disappeared, and we don't know what happened to them. I know this is something that's happening in Ukraine. We have kidnappings from 50,000 to 80,000 kidnappings. We have a problem that's still happening to this day. That is the forced recruitment of boys, girls, and adolescents from 16,000 to 20,000. The data is not there, but that I remember it. Actually, this is a problem because our wars is still ongoing. And just last week, there was a scandal because one of the guerrilla groups was going to attack one of the Colombian military, and the president decided to bomb the guerrilla groups. But because of the bombs, 7 kids were killed. They were forced recruitment of the guerrillas. They had weapons, but still they were 13 years old. So that's one of the tragedies that you keep seeing in Colombia over and over. Forced displacement is 52,000 people. Most of them are in Bogota, where I am right now. So Bogota is a city of about 10 million people, and most of them are migrants coming from different places in Colombia, fleeing violence. We are also very good at killing human rights activists. So more than 2,000 human rights activists have been killed since 2016. 2016 is an important date because it's when we signed the peace accords. Also, Colombia is the most lethal country for environmentalists. 1/3 of all of them killed in the world happened here, 48 people. And then we have drugs, right? So that's what people know about Colombia, that we are swimming in drugs and all stuff. I mean, we kind of are. 253,000 hectares of coca plantations were seen last year. That's the most by far anywhere in the world. And what's happening is that thanks to technology, cocaine production has become much more effective. So now out of the same plant, they get more cocaine. So cocaine production is out of the world. That's why Donald Trump is considering how does he says? He says that he wants to help us, which means he wants to bomb the hectares of coca plantations, but as I'm sure you guys can assume, it's not that easy. And this one last piece of information I wanted to give you about why a failed state. This is a difficult measure to have because it's difficult to track where all the drug money goes. But some estimates says that between 2 and 3% of Colombia's entire GDP is linked to drug trafficking. Because what drug traffickers do is that they wanna use the money to make it look legal. So they buy soccer teams, they buy malls, they buy different types of shops, and that's how that money ends up in the formal economy. So after this part of why Colombia is a failed state, I do want to say that, and yet that's not the picture I want you to take from my country. And it's not only because I want you guys to come. I've been trying to get my host there in Ukraine to visit me one day, but because it's the truth. Like when I give you all this information, you're probably imagining this place filled with violence and streets that you cannot walk and state forces that cannot do much. But again, as you guys know from your own experience with war, um, wars are complex and the truth is much more complex. And Colombia right now is one of the most developed countries in Latin America. The picture on the upper left is from Bogota, where I am. I'm actually close to that building right now. The picture up on the top on the right, that's near Medellin, and it is as beautiful as it looks. The picture on the right down, it's from Cartagena, which is one of the best places to go to the sea. And the picture on the left down, it's called Caño Cristales, which is known as the Lake of the Seven Colors because the water has a lot of colors naturally. Actually, let me show you. If you see Petro's image, he took it there. Um, and this is a place that we couldn't visit before the peace accord because it was taken by guerrillas, but now Colombia's state forces control them. And what I want you guys to know about this is Colombia is one of the most developed economically. We have really big cities with basically not as much violence. For example, if you want a vacation in Bogota or you want a vacation in Medellin or in Cartagena, you would be extremely safe. The worst parts of the conflict are behind us. Kidnappings are not happening anymore. And the last 20 years or so have helped Colombia not only sign peace accords, but it has also helped us improve our standing as a global player. So I told you that we have big dreams. So the first one is Colombia is a cultural referent in Latin America. And this is interesting because I do think that whenever a country has exports of cultural products, that becomes a type of soft power. And I'm sure you guys are in international relations know, for example, South Korea, with all the K-pop and with all the K-dramas they are exporting, they're getting a lot of soft power. And we know the United States with Hollywood has had a lot of soft power during the year. So if you want Latin American Hollywood, Colombia is the place. A lot of Netflix series are filmed in Colombia. A lot of big telenovelas are filmed in Colombia and then watched all over the region. And we have become a hub for big concerts. So right now, if you want a big concert and a good place to go to a concert, Colombia is one of the main points where all the big artists come. This may sound trivial, but when you look at it as part of GDP, this is about 6 to 7% of our GDP. And this connects to the fact that we are one of the most biodiverse countries. And thanks to tourism, it has been getting a lot. Colombia has been explored more. And if you, for example, if you like nature, or if you wanna go from one type of weather to other in only a 1 hour flight, Colombia is a country that you can do that. We have the one of the most variety of birds, and the reinvention of our country comes from being extremely violent to now being a place for culture and a place for sustainable tourism. And I mean, Petro says, I'm going to mock my president a little. Sorry, I don't want to get too political, but he says that he wants to exchange the petrol. Um, the petrol money for tourism money, but I mean, we are still a country that depends heavily on exporting petrol and gas. But that's kind of the idea. Now to what to something that might be more of interest to you. We are a diplomatic player. We've always been, because I mean, you saw that we are the fourth biggest economy, and Colombia has always been important in the creation of institutions. So, for example, the OEA, which is Latin America's version of the UN, was created in Colombia. The treaty was signed in Colombia, and our country has always had a big presence there. There is also CELAC, which is for Latin American and Caribbean countries. Colombia just had the presidency there, and all regional initiatives. There is no regional initiative where Colombia isn't a part of. The problem is, and this is a problem not only of Colombia, but I think of Latin America, is that the region is extremely disconnected, one country from other, because we have a lot of ideological swings. So, for example, you know Hugo Chavez, and you know that there was a time where Latin America was heavily left-leaning. So we had Hugo Chavez in Venezuela, we had Rafael Correa in Ecuador, we had Evo Morales in Bolivia, and Colombia had Álvaro Uribe, which was extreme right? So we didn't have much of an influence in regional initiatives. Now Colombia is left-leaning, but the region is going to the right. So you have Javier Milei in Argentina, you have Noboa in Ecuador, and Petro is trying to play with Lula da Silva in Brazil and with Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico. But my point is, beyond who's in the presidency, what's happened is that the region has always had inner fightings, because we have a lot of ideological swings, and that doesn't allow us to have an united front. Hugo Chavez famously wanted to create something akin to the European Union. And I think that something like that in Latin America would help us be a much better player in the global stage, but it didn't happen because of these differences. And it's Colombia. I mean, so Colombia has tried to get attention in the UN, but the problem is that historically in the region we have been seen as the United States lapdog. So I don't know how much you know about the history of Latin America, but whenever you see a dictatorship or a coup d'etat, you're going to find the US behind. So United States in the especially in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, they intervened everywhere. So they helped kill Chile's president Salvador Allende. They intervened in Nicaragua. They obviously intervened in Cuba. They intervened in Argentina. They intervened in Honduras. So the region has a lot of distrust of the United States. And the United States has treated the region as their backyard, basically. That's actually something a United States president said. So, I mean, I'm telling you guys this to know that in that context, Colombian diplomacy has always been pro-American. Until Petro, I'm going to tell you a little bit about that in a second. But until Petro, Colombia has always been pro-American. So being pro-American, and you have to understand that the United States is our biggest economic partner. something like 35% of exports from Colombia go to the US. And also the US finances a lot of our military efforts. And part of the successes we have had in the last 20 years against the guerrillas is thanks to the US aid. But since we've always been close to the colonizers, the rest of the countries always think of Colombia with distrust, right? And then there's Venezuela. Colombia and Venezuela are deeply, deeply connected. I mean, I'm from Cucuta, which is in the frontier with Venezuela, and basically you feel Venezuelan, right? So you have cultural ties, you have economic ties, you have uh, deep histories between the two countries. And you guys know that Venezuela has been in a crisis for the last 2 decades, even more. So what happens in Venezuela creates tension. And Colombia has had a difficult part, like a difficult position, because right now we have 3 million Venezuelans that migrated from their country living here. And we are by far the biggest receiver of refugees from Venezuela. So although our governments have wanted Nicolás Maduro to go out, they also need cooperation with the regime, not only for the migrants, but for all these ties economically. So that means that diplomatically, Colombia is in a weird spot, and that's going to be important for Russia in a second. Some more things that I want to tell you guys. So our GDP growth has been steady. Uh, our this is important too. Our civil society is strong. So you would think that because of the violence, civil society institutions would be censored. And yes, they've been killed and persecuted and kidnapped. But civil society created the Constitution of 1991. We are one of the most advanced countries in LGBT rights. We are one of the most advanced countries in women's rights. We have abortion up to the 24th week of pregnancy, which is one of the most protected laws in the entire world. We have a lot of peace initiatives, and we have a lot of experiences in peace building, in reconciliation, in treating victims, in negotiation. So that's important. Our system of transitional justice is a reference for the world. Also, we are extremely good at search for missing persons. I know that's something Ukraine is suffering right now. And Colombia then is key to create links with Mexico, Chile, and Brazil. Our current political climate is the first time that we have a leftist president, but we are not a leftist country. He has a lot of strong opposition in Congress. We have a vibrant democracy. People are voting more and more and more and more. And we have elections next year. They're saying that probably the right is going to come back into power. I'm not so sure, but our president is very unpopular. But we can talk about that more if you have questions. But I do wanna, because I know I'm taking a lot of time. Sorry, I do wanna talk about Russia, Ukraine, and Colombia. So when the war started in Ukraine, Colombia understood it as much of the liberal democracies understood it, and is that they're attacking a country just because they're attacking it. And a lot of people said we must support Ukraine. But to be honest, most people don't know about Ukraine. Especially they haven't been following what's been happening. And we have a problem, and is that Russia has a lot of influence in the type of information Colombians consume. And I'm going to tell you a bit about that. So these are screenshots I took today. And one of the main preoccupations I have with the way Colombians are understanding your invasion right now is that a lot of Colombians are fighting in Ukrainians' army and they are dying. But the way our media and the way those stories are getting to Colombia is that they're mercenaries, that they have been fooled by the Ukrainian government, that they're dying for nothing. And as I told you, we have a strong disdain for paramilitaries. And so a lot of Colombians understand that Colombian fighting in Ukraine are paramilitaries, basically. I know this. I know because I was there and because I understood all of this. I know this is disinformation, but I'm worried that this is the type of news that's being published. So, for example, and El Tiempo, which is Colombia's biggest newspaper, just published this news that says deaths continue in Colombian Legion in Ukraine. 3 mercenaries died in combats against Russia. Infobae, which is an Argentinian newspaper, but that also has presence in Colombia, says Colombians recruited as mercenaries in Ukraine denounce being misled and abandonment. The 12 million that they promise are a lie. And then you have people that like Ina Afino Genova, which work for Russia Today. And if you see, she has a lot of followers, and she published a video that says mercenaries of Colombia and Ukraine. I see this is how they're recruited to die, and this has a lot of views. And if you if you see the image I have here on the left, this is Russia Today, and just today they published something about the number of mercenaries, Colombian mercenaries killed there, and that's a problem because if you know how this kind of disinformation works, if people in Colombia believe that Colombians dying in Ukraine are mercenaries, then they are also prone to believe that the Ukrainian government employs paramilitaries and is not democratic. And you know that most of the messages that Russia produces about the Ukrainian invasion is that they're basically denazifying Ukraine and all of that. So why is there this influence? First is we have a educational history here in Colombia. As I told you, a lot of people distrust the USA. So Russia has been seen as a model of how to oppose the United States. So a lot of people, especially people in the left, are open, especially romantically, to the idea of the communist revolution and the Marxist ideals. And so they think Russia is this great space of resistance. And there's a lot of rejection of the US. We also have the Venezuela problem, and is that Russia is heavily involved in the Maduro regime. So they give a lot of money to Maduro. They send military equipment, and so they also have a lot of ties in Colombia. Our president has had an ambivalent position towards Ukraine and towards the conflict. And basically, what my reading from that is that he doesn't care that much, and he sees Russia as one possible ally. There is this idea that we need to pivot towards China because the US has abandoned us. And I mean, the Trump administration has been quite hostile towards Colombia. So we are facing that. Also, we have zero diplomatic outreach from Ukraine. Like, I know Colombia is not a priority, but that shows. Russia does has an embassy here, and they do a lot of outreach. So I mean, you're being out diplomat. But the good news is that there is a lot of space to grow relations. I took this picture of the toilet paper when I was in Ukraine. I brought some. I have them in my house. But I do think there is a lot of space to grow the relations. Because and this is something I wanna finish this lecture with, because I know maybe you have questions and I wanna have a space to clarify whatever you guys wanna know more about. But what I want you to take from this, and this is something I also told people in Ukraine when I was there, is that we know what it is like to mourn your country. But I do believe that our shared pain can bring us together. We are also experts in resilience. When I was in Ukraine, I had the same thought over and over, and I was like, you had a problem of missing persons, we can help. You have a problem of how to accompany psychologically the victims of a conflict that hasn't stopped, we can help. You have a problem of feeling like a small player where big players ignore you guys. We can help. You guys believe in democracy. We also do. You guys just want to protect freedoms. That's also we have struggled with. You guys are going to need to investigate what happened and create truth commissions. We are experts in that. You guys are going to need to get the international courts to intervene in many cases. We are experts on that. So I know that it is hard to convince people like, hey, maybe we should open diplomatic relations with Colombia, because it's like, what? We need Trump, we need um, the EU, we need etc. But I do see how getting closer can help both countries. This is a picture I took of a coffee shop in Kharkiv, and the coffee there is Colombian. But also something I like about this picture is that the white birds in Colombia are a synonym with peace. We know we know how being afraid and how being in pain feels, but we also know why you guys fight. You guys are fighting because you want peace, because you want a chance to leave your country. That's what Colombia has done for the past 50, 60 years. So I do think it's nice that we start talking. And that's what I had to you guys today. Thank you for paying attention. And I don't know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rincón Escalante, for this thought-provoking speech. We are truly grateful for the depth of your analysis and the valuable perspectives you have shared with us today. And I think we will now move to the question and answer part. Dear participants, if you have a question, please raise your hand and we will give you the opportunity to speak. Alternatively, you may submit your questions in the chat and we will address them during the conference. So we encourage you to take the advantage of this opportunity. Who would like to start? Let's begin with the questions. We have a question. Bogdana Batsko, please, your question.
Thank you. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Again, Juan, thank you so much for such an interesting presentation. You know, we showed you Ukraine, and it's a great pleasure to keep this collaboration and also get to know Colombia from such a great and deep perspective. I have a lot of questions, and if you don't have more, I can just go with them. You mentioned that when you were in Ukraine, you had been thinking a lot about these connections of our history, of our experience, and maybe. So I have two questions which are a bit related. In your opinion, we have a lot of space to connect, right? But under current like geopolitical situation and the point where we are at right now, what are like top three things you think Ukrainians and Colombians can connect on, and you can maybe you have one point where the politicians could find a connection because it's one level, where the society could connect, it's another one. So that's my first question about like these main topics that where we can build these connections. And my second question is more philosophical one. In your opinion, do you think us Ukrainians should we project the truth about Ukraine on the Colombian society, where there is a very strong civil society which has impact on the policymakers, or we will, since our capacity is limited, we have less resources than Russia has, for example, to maintain a huge informational campaign about Ukraine, about Europe. So our resources are pretty limited, and maybe we should not focus on the general Colombian public or influencing the opinion on Ukraine, but rather work with politicians which have the power and can make foreign policy decisions. So which direction is more important for us, in your opinion, in the Colombian society, and maybe in which direction we could focus in the future? Thank you.
Yes. I think the easier and probably cheapest way to get more impact would be to create links between civil society, because I think people are more open to that. So for example, I'm at university, and I think a lot of Colombian universities would be open to create spaces to talk about Ukraine and to discuss this. And I know there are teachers that study this, and that doesn't have to be extremely expensive, because I do know that you guys are don't have the same resources. But for example, I do think that a lot of cooperation between universities. I also think you should try to get in contact with, for example, our transitional justice system, because I think they're more open to sharing experiences and to creating high level networks that are not necessarily politics oriented. And I think that can help a lot. One of the main things I think you guys can use Colombia for is it's especially to connect the people that are in charge of um, mental health, for example, of treating victims, of understanding how to investigate crimes. So I'm sure that a lot of organizations here that are devoted to that would be more than open to speaking to you guys and to create that exchange of information. I do think that you should try to talk to some politicians. So, for example, um, I'm going to use an awful example, but it works. Israel does something, and is that every year they take about 10 politicians to Israel, and they pay for the trip and they show it to them, and that means that a lot of Colombian politicians are blindly pro-Israel. I know you guys don't want them to be blindly pro-Ukrainian, but I do think that it works. Like when if you guys can like pick some politicians and tell them, hey, you wanna come here, or you wanna see for your own eyes, or create those type of conversations, I think it would be useful. My question, because that I don't know, is what kind of political cooperation can be created. Because, for example, what I would do is I would try to get politicians from Brazil, from Colombia, from Mexico, from Argentina at the same time. And if you can get those countries to start changing their ideas, that I think can help. Because what happens is that we have a lot of Russian disinformation, and then when you think of Ukrainian, it's like, I don't know who to talk on, right? Or I don't know who to consult. And I think that can change if you want to do like think exactly how to do it without expending too many resources in that. Because right now I know, for example, Ukrainian diplomacy is focused on the European Union and catering to Trump's childlike impulses. But I do think that you guys can start making waves in Latin America. Yeah, that's what I will say to you.
Thank you very much, Bogdana, for your question, and Juan Carlos for your response. Let's move to the next questions. Dear participants, do you have another questions?
I have two more questions, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
So this one, I think, are less complicated. So we're talking about connections, but maybe you could think of the topics that Ukrainians should not start with Colombians. Like, I know that in the region, a pretty triggering topic is the OTAN, NATO. And for us, it's been a very long discussion of joining this organization to secure our, like to strengthen our security and get guarantees on our security. But just one small example, maybe you could elaborate on that one or think of others. My first question. And my second question, maybe to continue discovering Colombia for us, you could recommend two musicians, two movies, two books to continue after that presentation. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, so for example, NATO, Colombia, and I think Latin America in general is very anti-militaristic, especially because they believe that a lot of military initiatives from the global north are colonizers, especially from the US, even though, I mean, Colombia has a lot of US army bases here. So my guess is that if you would make an approach, it wouldn't be NATO based. It also wouldn't be, I don't think it works to attack Russia, because they would be like, I mean, you want us to cut ties with somebody that has money and no. But for example, you guys can talk about peace building. So that's something that is very important for us. We can, I mean, I'm sure a lot of agricultural relations can be built because we are both agricultural countries. Also, you can talk about institution building. I know you guys have a lot of experience in fighting corruption, but there's also a lot of work left there. Same in Colombia. So that's also a key thing that can be. I mean, I do think that the way you approach Colombia is very similar to the way you would approach the European Union, because we also like to think that we are European in terms of institutions, right? So we have these ideals of democracy, of the rule of law, of anti-corruption, of transparency, and I do think that's a place to start. Colombia and Latin America doesn't like to be interventionist, so probably you are not going to get a declaration of Russia bad, Ukraine good, but you're going to get a lot of conversations that help strengthen the ties between the countries. So, for example, what Taiwan does here in Colombia is that they have an economic approach. So what they say we don't need you to cut ties with China. We don't need you to denounce that, but let's work together. Let's create ties, and so it works. Obviously, we don't know if China invades what. I mean, Colombia is probably gonna be like non-committal, but I mean that's kind of what there is. About Colombia, you guys have to read 100 Years of Solitude. You guys have to listen to Shakira. And I mean, you made a playlist of Ukrainian music. I have to make a playlist of Colombian music, and I will give it to you so you can send them to the entire class if you want.
Thank you so much for your response. Maybe we have new questions. Dear participants, don't be shy to ask new questions. Oh, Ola, go ahead with your question.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you that you have today time for us. So I have one question, and my question is, why do some Latin American countries, including Colombia, hesitate to take a clear stance on the war against Ukraine, and how does this affect global diplomacy?
Yes, that's a good question. I would say there are many reasons, but there are two main reasons. One is that Russia has a lot of investments in Latin America. So not so much in Colombia, but Russia has a lot of influence and a lot of money, and they give military assistance, and they've been building this for many years. So for most countries, and I know this is gonna sound rough, but for most countries, it's like I'm not gonna lose that for a country that I don't even know, right? I'm gonna give you two reasons. That's the first one. The second reason is that many people here actually buy Russians propaganda, so actually believe that Zelensky is a Nazi and actually believe that the Russians are persecuted in Ukraine. So a lot of people think that it's not their problem to intervene. And at the state level, uh, Latin America does have a long history of non-intervening, right? So they say like this is a problem between Russia and Ukraine, and we are gonna remain neutral, and we're gonna try. Actually, what our president said was that he was gonna look for peace negotiations. Obviously, he has done shit about it, but that's kind of the way the region usually works. And especially if you see the bigger players, so if you see Brazil, I mean, Brazil's economic ties to Russia and to China are huge, and they don't want uh, to put that in risk. And the European Union has some economic ties with us, but in terms of how much, it's not that much. And then the United States does have a lot of influence, but Trump and even Biden have not really been forcing our governments to take a stand. So the region just prefers to stay non-committal.
Thank you so much, Ola, for your questions, and Juan Carlos for your response. I think that was the last question for today, and I want to, before we officially conclude today's lecture, I would like to sincerely thank all participants for their questions. And a special and heartfelt thank you goes to our speaker, Mr. Juan Carlos Escalante, generously sharing your time, expertise, and insights with us today. Your lecture has been both inspiring and enlightening, offering a deep understanding of Colombia's political landscape and the role of civil society and its place with a complex global environment. To all participants, thank you for your attention, interest, and active participation. We appreciate each of you for your contributing to its success. Thank you once again, Mr. Juan Carlos Rincón Escalante, and everyone join us today. We hope you live inspired, and we look forward to welcoming you to the future events. Wishing you continued your inspiration until we meet again. Thank you for everyone. Take care and stay curious. Goodbye to
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much. See you soon.
Muchas gracias.
Hopefully
See
in
you.
Ukraine. Bye.